This is a classic novel in general, but especially for book collectors and those of us that love books in a very personal way. The combination of futurism, dystopianism, and ideological critique places the work as a must-read for any educated person in the West. I'll go over the basics without spoiling it and give you some of my thoughts on the general ideological, philosophical foundations that stream through the entire novel. Stay tuned. Welcome to biblioCultist, where I review books that I find interesting in the topics of religion, philosophy, history, and fiction. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video, comment on the video, and click the bell so you get notified when I put out a new video. Also, I'll put below and on the side my socials like X and my Ko-Fi account, in which you can check out my merch store and also donate a singular or a recurrent amount. If you like what I'm doing here and if you want to support the channel, I will really appreciate it. In this episode, I'm going over the classic Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, and this edition is from 2013 by Simon & Schuster. This is a very popular book, so you will find many editions of it. Just pick whichever one you prefer. Content is king, so that's all that matters at the end of the day. Now, the concern presented in this work is highly relevant these days. We're living through a time in which we're constantly bombarded with the notion that certain ideas, thoughts, and the books that contain them should be either banned, altered, or erased altogether. But as most of you know, in modern civilization, books are the spinal cord of a coherent, advanced society. And if you want your culture to thrive, there must be some flexibility on the kinds of books that are available to the population. That a culture of intellectuality, debate, and exploration of ideas, no matter how strange they are, is a prerequisite for having a cast of people who dedicate themselves to the art of thinking and creating. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that I am the type to advocate a complete laissez-faire attitude towards content and books in general, because a lot of times when people speak about the free market of ideas, they also include a lot of garbage. You can put between two covers a pamphlet to sell you shampoo, for example. And just because this type of advertising is within two covers doesn't mean it qualifies as a legitimate intellectual engagement. Historically, most civilizations had some kind of focus, a filter of some kind, in which they would primarily have topics that elevated society. Now, keep in mind, of course, that before the printing press, and even during the printing press in the early days, everything was not printed. There was obviously a cream rising to the top kind of scenario, in which either people that could afford to have the printer would put books out, or the most quality items would go on the press. Today, we're living in a scenario in which anything, no matter if it's correct or thought out, can be placed between two covers. So I am aware of the critique in general of just having no controls on information, but times do change. And at this point in our society, if I had to choose between complete and utter freedom of the press, what kind of books you can have access to, and having some restriction, I'd rather have no restriction, because I do not trust those in power to make the correct decisions. And as a matter of fact, the people in power right now are the ones making the decisions of what books to print or not, and you kind of have to bypass them and go outside of the mainstream bookstores and things like that to get good information. Most of the time, you're going to get really good quality stuff if you go to older books. A lot of this polished nonsense that is printed these days, or that it's placed in front of us, it's quite empty of real meaning. But you would have civilizations before that the entire library was about theology, mathematics, etc. So how do you achieve that in the modern world? A very difficult topic. This book, it explores it in a different way, because it's not necessarily about filtering, it's about elimination. This form of repression expressed in this novel is about the comfortable and the ignorant. It's a world in which technology is used to keep people stupid and diffused of quality thoughts, a world in which books are banned for the protection of the hypersensitive and the weak. It is not really an issue of controversial content, but that all content will hurt the feelings of these pathetically comfortable, highly micromanaged weaklings. So in the novel, firemen are primarily there to burn books and not really putting out fires, which is the main gimmick of the story, that it's in every flap of the book, so I don't think I'm giving you a spoiler there. The novel points out that even the art in this society, which is highly dystopian, has become abstract, even refusing to place human figures so as not to upset people. And we see that in the modern world, in which modern art is so ridiculously abstract, it's basically meaningless or meaningful depending on the perspective, which is kind of the whole point of making everything relative and subjective. You put a can of paint on top of a canvas, take a picture of it, then draw a crown on the top. You have a work of art. It's meaningless. I just invented this right now, but someone will see this and think, oh wow, I know what it means, because it's highly subjective. And therefore it doesn't touch a universal. It remains superficial. To exemplify the point, let me read a few quotes here. Let me start with this one right here. We must all be alike. Not everyone born free and equal, as the Constitution says, but everyone made equal. Each man the image of every other. Then all are happy. For there are no mountains to make them cower, to judge themselves against. So a book is a loaded gun in the house next door. Burn it. Take the shot from the weapon. Breach man's mind. Who knows who might be the target of the well-read man? Me? I won't stomach them for a minute. So in that quote, you can see the target of the author is obviously hyper-egalitarianism, and even though this is the clear characteristic of liberalism in the old sense, in the sense of the French Revolution, for example, and of the American Revolution, he seems to be pushing it a little bit further into the realm of so-called communism, critiquing this enforced equality. And the only way to achieve this is to banish and destroy differences, and therefore intellectuality must die, because that is a source of hierarchy and dissension. Continuing in that same vein, let me give you another quote. If you don't want a house built, hide the nails in wood. If you don't want a man unhappy politically, don't give him two sides to a question to worry him. Give him one. Better yet, give him none. So obviously I love that quote because it exemplifies again a very common theme even today, in which there is an entire political movement to either cancel out independent thought and eliminate the illusion of distinctions, so that at some point people can relax knowing that there's only really one choice, and at the end of it, there's not really a choice at all. It is too stressful to go through a process of making decisions. Binary aspects of life, like our DNA, which is clearly either a yes or a no, as geneticists explain. Well, now, let's just not make any decision. Forget the fact that existence itself requires this. and let's just live in a form of stasis and let other people make decisions for us. Pretty scary. So books in this novel are a source of memory, of collective wisdom, but also a source of distress. The bibliophile characters are troublemakers because they're fanatical, and Bradbury presents them almost as the old school Christian martyrs, willing to die for the cause, for the defense of free thought, for the protection of books, etc. Bradbury also accuses all sects of being potential book burners. And I can relate to the criticism, although a book has as much value as its content. Like I said, if you put garbage between two covers, yes, it is a book, but the content itself is nonsense. And if I don't put it in my shelf, it doesn't mean that I'm a book hater of some sort. It actually means that I have sufficient discrimination between what is good and what is bad, which is exactly the whole point of free thinking, and it's exactly the point of personal autonomy, to have some level of social interaction and collective engagement, but also have the ability to make personal decisions when it comes to what goes into my brain. Now, the story has a particular character, if I can call it that caught my attention because I've read this many, many years ago, and I reread it again recently. And in between those two readings, I've actually seen movies about the book. And I noticed that for some reason, they do not put the mechanical hound in the story, or they present it in a way that is unrecognizable. And if you haven't read the book, it's okay. You'll see what I mean when you go into the story. But I find it very strange that they wouldn't take such an awesome element of the story and place it in a way that would enhance the movie. As a matter of fact, most of the films that I've seen, they really distort the whole point of the novel. And I don't understand if it's either because they don't get the point of the novel or because they are insensitive to the irony that modern people are 100% responsible and guilty of doing the very thing that the book is criticizing. That modern people don't seem to be aware that they are living themselves in this world. Obviously, not to the exaggerated level, but we are pretty close to a society that believes in the same nonsense that Mr. Bradbury is criticizing. So, all in all, in closing, this is a wonderful classic. It forces you to question the value of books itself, consider the weight of mass censorship, critiques modernity and the obsession of being inside these so-called safe spaces, and pathetically cuddled in a world of harmless information, all the while menacing others with violence if they don't allow them to be cuddled and safe. A very ridiculous irony and oxymoron. And I agree with the general feel of the work that if we don't put books in the center of a society, intellectuality, study, etc., then we are on our way to decay, corruption, and death, for sure. So hopefully you have derived some benefit from this review. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video, comment on the video, and click the bell so you never miss another review. And I put these out every Sunday afternoon. So thank you for being with me. See you next time.